Okay, this is part 2 of Federalist number 9. I'm going to read the first paragraph to you. Actually, I hope you have the Federalist right in front of you and you're reading it along with me. A firm union will be of the utmost moment to the peace and liberty of the states as a barrier against domestic faction and insurrection. Again, union is important because it provides safety against domestic faction, whether it's political divisions or group divisions, people who, we're going to again focus on faction, the word faction some more in Federalist number 10. But he says there are certain things that will come along that will threaten this union. It's faction, and then it's insurrection. Now, insurrection, when I first started reading the Federalist Papers, I thought it was mostly just, let's say, farmers' rebellion and things like that. But the more you read, you see the concern that especially the southern states, that they had of enslaved people's uprising. There was people that were enslaved to rising up and fighting for their rights. They were very, very scared of that, especially in the South, where a huge population, when I say huge, anywhere from 35 to 45% of the population of the state was enslaved people. Some places a little higher. So they were always worried about that. So when he says we got to unite to maybe have a barrier against insurrection, it's like in case in a state, group of enslaved people rise up, you around the union can help us put it down. So keep that in mind. It is impossible to read the history of the petty republics of Greece and Italy without feeling sensations of horror and disgust at the distractions with which they were continually agitated, and at the rapid succession of revolutions by which they were kept in a state of perpetual vibration between extremes of tyranny and anarchy. When he says petty, he's talking about small. He says you look at these small republics, a lot of them in Greece and around Italy in the middle of the millennium, let's say in 1400, 1500, those centuries. He says you'll see so much vibrations up and down. There will be quiet for 10 years, then there will be turmoil for another 10 years. Vicissitudes, turmoil. So it's talking about things constantly changing, governments not being able to control things, not being able to keep people's life and property secure. So he says, you look at the history of these republics, it makes you sad. You look with horror and disgust, makes you sick. And another thing he mentions is tyranny and anarchy. They had a cyclical view of history and government. You know, you would get to have democracy, where a lot of people rule. People rule. And then it goes to anarchy, because anything goes. Then to make your life safe and secure, to make your property safe and secure, you put everything in the hands of a tyrant, and then you pretty much establish a tyranny just so that you can be safe, your property can be safe. So it had those cyclical view of history. So he says all you see in these republics was vicissitudes, ups and downs, turmoil, and also a cyclical path to things. You'd go from anarchy to tyranny to democracy and back. Later on, as you read more and become familiarized with the reading and writings of these founders, you will see that they would read the history of Rome, the fall of Rome, and people like Polybius, Cicero, and these major writers of the Rome that these guys were really familiar with. So it says we don't want that to happen to us in America. Then he continues, if they exhibit occasional calms, these only serve as a short-lived contrasts to the furious storms that are to succeed. If now and then intervals of felicity open themselves to the view, we behold them with a mixture of regret, arising from the reflection that the pleasing scenes before us are soon to be overwhelmed by the tempestuous waves of sedition and party rage. So he says, if we ever see a few years of calm, we know that the tempestuous few years ahead of us are coming. It's constantly reminding, it's constantly talking about floods, turmoil. If you are right now, he's talking about these republics of the past republics. If they ever had felicity and calm, you have heard of the calm before the storm. That's why he uses the terms he uses. He says you're an island of peace and calm and quiet, but that tempest, the flood, storms, those are coming. And these are the way that these republics were established. You could never count on stability. So he uses the beautiful language that you hear. I mean, you read it, actually see how beautiful it is, to set the scene for you. If